Hi, and thank you for visiting my channel. For more information, kindly subscribe and follow. Now let's get started.
When it comes to the tribal chief, Roman Reigns, actions certainly do speak louder than words, and a monumental instance of that occurred at SummerSlam. For however incredible and nostalgic the reunion of the OG bloodline was last fall, criticisms regarding how it came about did float around. It was not so much about the sudden inclusion of CM Punk, because that was obviously building to something bigger, which it did, and seemingly continues to do, but more about how easily Jey Uso forgave Roman Reigns. Despite Sami Zayn's pleas, Reigns never apologized to Uso for all the sins he committed against his former right-hand man. Reigns still called himself the tribal chief, and he stayed pretty much the same man even after turning babyface. He was still pompous and never once congratulated or even interacted with Uso following his Royal Rumble win, something that many considered was a major creative blunder given how much emotional equity it could have built for Jey's story and Roman's character evolution. The head of the table was then obviously off TV following WrestleMania 41. But when he made his return to save Jey Uso a few weeks ago, as fans roared with their ones up acknowledging him, we could finally see that he had somewhat changed. In fact, going back to Raw after WrestleMania, he had already hinted at that change. That change was birthed at WrestleMania 41, when Roman Reigns lost his Wiseman, Paul Heyman. And the event was just as monumental for his character arc as WrestleMania 40, when the head of the table lost the undisputed WWE Championship to Cody Rhodes. Dissecting the character of the tribal chief. The focal point of Roman Reigns' tribal chief persona has been trust. And the germ of those notions Reigns has regarding relationships was birthed when Seth Rollins famously took a steel chair to his back and the Shield imploded. Reigns was betrayed by Sami Zayn, Jimmy Uso, Jey Uso, Solo Sikoa, and Paul Heyman at various points during the Bloodline saga. But here's the problem, he placed his trust in people who put him on a pedestal because of his greatness, but Reigns turned out to be different. These people looked up to Roman Reigns for the man he could be. But the man he was the problem. Jey Uso, more than anybody, helped him hold the undisputed WWE Universal Championship for the longest time. Moral discourse aside, he did it because he loved Roman, because they were family. And so did Solo, Jimmy, Sami, and Paul Heyman. In return, Reigns gave them prominent spots on the island of relevancy and elevated them to unprecedented heights. But his ego flew even higher. For all he did for them, Reigns still looked at all of them as being beneath him. The tribal chief treated them like trash, and everyone was justified in betraying him. Roman Reigns deserved all the acts of betrayal he was on the receiving end of because he was not worthy of the trust he was given in the first place. The tribal chief's quest in his latest run has been just that, to become worthy of all the adulation, respect, and acknowledgement he has ever received. Roman Reigns got betrayed because he didn't earn his allies' trust, he coerced and manipulated them. Roman Reigns has finally understood what he has always lacked perspective on. He may have appeared on Raw after WrestleMania to exact revenge on Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman rather than to save CM Punk and Jey Uso. But when he returned to the Red brand almost 3 weeks ago, he did not come to earn or cost any World Heavyweight Championship opportunities, but strictly to help Jey. Punk and Reigns' contentious equation leaves plenty of room for them to get back to their story with a ton of paths available, but when he came back to save Uso, he was not just repaying debts, but making it clear that he finally views his cousin as an equal. When he asked Uso to team up with him at SummerSlam, he seemed like a man who understood that Jey might be unwilling to stand by his side, and that he was right. He may not have explicitly stated it, for it is not the OTC's style, but the man knew he had been wrong for not giving his bloodline comrades the respect they deserved, and he seemed like someone who wanted to make up for it. With his trust paid back, Roman Reigns is not just on a road back to the top, but on a path of healing. He is having fun with Jey Uso. He's reveling in the crowd's adoration, and he isn't jealous of Uso for being so popular with the WWE Universe, but rather subtly giving his stamp of approval to his former right-hand man. At SummerSlam, it all seemed to come together for Roman Reigns. The way Roman Reigns put it all on the line at SummerSlam and came to Uso's aid multiple times, including the crescendo where he sacrificed himself to Braun Breaker's spear to allow Jey to recover and take out and pin Bronson Reed, spoke volumes about Reigns' growth as a human being since WrestleMania. He has now become the best version of himself and the man he was always destined to be. Roman Reigns is the biggest star in the business, but is now also a man who, after veering off his path in a certain sense, has found his morality, his ability to trust people, and to be trustworthy himself. This time, He truly found his family, not bound by blood or manipulation, but by genuine love and mutual respect. In doing so, Reigns has truly found himself and become the man he was meant to be. The lights of Ford Field in Detroit shimmered down on a moment that was years in the making, a moment where the tribal war ceased, the prideful ego crumbled, and Roman Reigns, the man, emerged from beneath the mask of the tribal chief. SummerSlam 2025 was supposed to be just another night of dominance for Reigns. Another chapter in the saga of power and control. But instead, it became the night Roman Reigns rewrote his legacy, not as the tyrant who ruled over the bloodline with fear, but as a man who faced his past, his guilt, and his blood. Jey Uso had returned months earlier to a thunderous reaction, carrying with him not just momentum, but pain, the same pain Roman had inflicted upon him during their brutal 2020 feud. That year, Roman had beaten Jey into submission, manipulated him into servitude, and used him as a pawn in his larger game to become the head of the table. For years, Roman justified his cruelty in the name of family. But the truth was, he had broken Jey Uso, emotionally, spiritually, and almost physically. Now, Jey stood before him once again, not as a pawn, not as main event hype, but as the man who had walked through fire and returned stronger. And Roman knew, this match would not be just about the undisputed championship. It would be about redemption. As the bell rang and the crowd roared, you could see it in Roman's eyes. This wasn't the same cold, calculated tribal chief. This was a man wrestling with the ghosts of his past, each punch he threw not just a blow to his opponent but a plea for penance. The match was brutal. Both men fought with a rawness that told the story of their bloodline and betrayal. Jey targeted Roman's chest with fierce super kicks, echoing the beatings he had taken years ago. Roman, slower and more deliberate, didn't just try to overpower, he tried to reason. He spoke mid-match, at moments whispering, "I'm sorry, Us," in a voice barely audible over the commentary. Jey wouldn't relent. "You made me this way," he shouted after a flying crossbody that nearly crushed Roman's ribs. At one point, the referee got taken out, and that's when Solo Sikoa made his presence known. Marching down the ramp with his usual quiet rage, he was ready to interfere, ready to continue the bloodshed in Roman's favor. The tribal chief looked up, battered and beaten, and for the first time in over 3 years, waved Solo off. The crowd gasped. Roman mouthed, "Not like this." Solo looked confused, this wasn't the Roman Reigns he had followed. But Roman didn't flinch. He stood tall, between Jey and Solo, and shook his head. "We finished this like men. Like brothers." Solo backed off, and the crowd erupted in approval. This was a different Roman Reigns. Back in the ring, Jey launched another assault. He hit the Uso splash. The crowd counted with the ref. 1. 2. Kick out. But it wasn't desperation in Roman's face, it was determination. He wasn't clinging to his title. He was fighting for something more. The final moment came when Roman finally caught Jey midair and pulled him into a crushing spear. He paused, staring down at his cousin, broken, exhausted, but defiant. Roman looked at the ropes. He could go for the pin. But he didn't. Instead, he dropped to his knees. He held Jey's hand. And in front of 60,000 roaring fans and millions watching worldwide, Roman Reigns said the words no one expected. "I was wrong, Us. I hurt you. I hurt our family. I let the title change me." There was no acting in that moment. The tears in Roman's eyes were real. The years of lies, manipulation, and guilt came pouring out in a single confession. He stood up. And extended his hand. Jey looked at him, stunned. Angry. Conflicted. And then, he took it. The two embraced. Roman whispered something in his cousin's ear that the cameras couldn't catch. But the emotion was universal, years of war, finally ending in forgiveness. The match was called a no contest, but in many ways, it didn't matter. Roman Reigns didn't leave with the undisputed championship. He left as something far more important, a man reborn. Later backstage, Triple H spoke to the press. "This was the Roman Reigns we've waited for. The locker room leader. The man who elevates not by fear, but by respect." Fans online erupted. The hashtag Roman Redemption hashtag trended for 72 hours. Legends like The Rock and Rikishi shared the moment, praising Roman for doing what few men ever do, confront their sins and make amends. Paul Heyman, the once loyal wise man, was shown backstage wiping tears from his eyes. "That's the Roman I always believed in," he muttered. And Jey Uso? He walked out that night with his head held high, not as a defeated challenger, but as a man who finally got the justice and apology he never thought he'd hear. SummerSlam 2025 will forever be remembered not for a title change or a shocking heel turn. It will be remembered as the night Roman Reigns became the man he was destined to be. Not the tribal chief. Not the head of the table. But Roman Reigns, the brother, the leader, the man.